The rain hammered against the pristine windows of 1247 Maple Drive as Maya-chan pressed her small face against the glass, watching her mother Elena practice her pitch one final time. Unlike the sterile corridors of fictional space stations where survival depended on life support systems, this suburban fortress relied on something far more fragile: human compassion. "Remember, Maya," Elena whispered, adjusting her daughter's torn jacket, "I can cook anything from scraps, clean without damaging their precious belongings, and I always follow rules. You just need to feel them out." Maya nodded, her unusual gift already tingling at the edges of her consciousness. At 12, she possessed what the collapsed society now called keeper abilities, the rare talent to sense emotional authenticity. It was a skill that had kept them alive on the streets for 3 months since. The Henderson economic collapse of 2029 had stripped away their middle-class life. David Henderson opened the door, his weathered face scanning the drenched pair with practiced wariness. Behind him, Maya glimpsed Sarah Henderson clutching their 8-year-old son Tommy, while teenage daughter Zoe peered from the staircase with undisguised curiosity. The scene felt achingly familiar, not like some distant outpost among the stars, but like any American family trying to survive in a world that had forgotten its promises. "Please, sir," Maya began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "My mom can cook, clean, and follow rules. We won't be trouble. We just need shelter." The emotional waves hit Maya immediately. David's conflict crashed over her like a tsunami: genuine sympathy wrestling with deep-seated fear. Sarah's terror was sharp and metallic, focused on protecting her family at all costs. But underneath it all, Maya sensed something else: guilt. Old guilt, thick and choking. "Elena-chan," her mother said, extending a trembling hand. "I was head chef at Meridian Restaurant before everything changed. I can prepare meals from anything, maintain your home, and I understand boundaries. My daughter Maya is quiet, well-behaved, and gifted." David's eyes narrowed at the word gifted. In their new world, gifts meant power, and power meant danger. Maya felt his suspicion spike, but also his desperate need. The Hendersons were barely holding on to their slice of normalcy, and Elena's skills could mean the difference between thriving and merely surviving. "We had help before," Sarah finally spoke, her voice brittle as autumn leaves. "It didn't work out." Maya's gift caught the undercurrent of Sarah's words: layers of deception wrapped around a core of genuine trauma. Something terrible had happened to their previous help, and the weight of it was crushing this family from within. "We're different," Maya said softly, letting her natural empathy color her words. "We understand gratitude. We understand that trust must be earned." As thunder rolled overhead, David Henderson found himself staring into the eyes of a child who seemed to see straight through him. The decision he was about to make would change everything for his family, for these desperate strangers, and for the carefully constructed lies that had kept his conscience at bay. Asterisk. The Henderson house felt like a museum of the before times family. Photos from beach vacations, a piano that someone once played, books that suggested leisure time for reading. Maya ran her fingers along the kitchen counter where she and Elena would now work, marveling at appliances that still functioned in a world where many neighborhoods had lost power permanently. "The rules are simple," Sarah explained, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had learned to be hard. "Elena works in the kitchen and maintains the common areas. Maya helps with light duties and stays out of the family spaces unless invited. You sleep in the converted basement room, and you earn your keep through productivity, not sentiment." Maya watched her mother nod with practiced humility, but she felt Elena's internal rage burning like a furnace. Once, Elena had commanded a staff of 12 in a renowned restaurant. Now she was being lectured about productivity by someone who had never worked a day in food service. The economic collapse hadn't just stolen their security. It had inverted their entire social order. Unlike the rigid hierarchy of a space station, where everyone understood their role in maintaining life support, this new arrangement felt unstable and arbitrary. The Hendersons maintained their authority through ownership of property, not expertise or leadership. It was a system designed to fail, and Maya could feel its cracks everywhere. Dr. Marcus Webb, the neighborhood's informal leader, arrived for dinner that evening. A former hospital administrator who had parlayed his medical knowledge into community influence. He represented the new class of micro-oligarchs who had emerged from the collapse. Maya served his plate with downcast eyes, but her gift was working. Over time, excellent preparation, Elena, Dr. Webb said, though Maya sensed his words were aimed at David. You're fortunate to have found such skilled help. Quality domestic assistance is becoming increasingly rare. The casual dehumanization made Maya's stomach turn. She caught Zoe Henderson's eye across the table. The teenager was the only family member who seemed genuinely uncomfortable with the arrangement. Unlike her parents, who had rationalized their new role as benefactors, Zoe still remembered when treating people as commodities was considered morally reprehensible. After dinner, Maya helped Elena clean while the Henderson family retired to their private living room. Through the thin walls, she could hear Dr. Webb's voice dropping to conspiratorial tones. The Kowalskis made a mistake with their last placement, he was saying. Too much independence, not enough gratitude. These people need to understand their position clearly from the beginning. Maya's gift picked up David's discomfort, but also his acceptance. Whatever had happened to the Hendersons' previous help, it had been deemed necessary by the neighborhood's power structure. The price of safety in this new world wasn't just servitude, it was the complete surrender of human dignity. Later, as Maya and Elena huddled in their basement room, Elena finally spoke the words that had been building all day. We're not guests. Here, Maya, we're not even employees, we're property. And property that becomes inconvenient, ... She didn't need to finish. Maya had felt the emotional residue clinging to their room, like smoke, fear, desperation, and then nothing. Someone had been terrified in this space, and then they had simply vanished from the emotional landscape entirely. 2 weeks into their new life, Maya had developed a routine that made her invisible while keeping her gift active. She served meals, silently, cleaned with methodical precision, and listened to the emotional currents flowing through the Henderson household like underground rivers. What she discovered made her wish she possessed any other talent in the world. Tommy Henderson, the 8-year-old, was the family's emotional barometer. His nightmares had grown worse since Maya and Elena's arrival, not from their presence, but from something his young mind had witnessed months earlier. During one of his tearful episodes, Maya caught fragments of his suppressed memories, a woman screaming, his father's voice raised in anger, and then terrible silence. Unlike the clean, necessary violence of survival stories set in space, where death came from environmental hazards or alien threats, the violence here was intimate and human. It wore the face of neighborly concern and community protection. Zoe Henderson had become Maya's unlikely ally, though neither girl acknowledged it directly. The teenager would find excuses to spend time in the kitchen, helping with dishes, or homework at the counter where Maya worked. During these moments, Maya felt Zoe's genuine remorse and her growing determination to understand what had happened to Maria Santos, the woman who had occupied their basement room before them. She was nice, Zoe said one afternoon, her voice carefully neutral. Maria. She used to help Tommy with his Spanish homework. He keeps asking where she went. Maya's gift caught the layers beneath Zoe's words, guilt, fear, and a dangerous curiosity that mirrored her own. Whatever the official story, Zoe suspected the truth was far darker. The breakthrough came during a neighborhood gathering at the Henderson home. Dr. Webb had organized what he called a community integration meeting, where several families displayed their domestic help, like prize livestock. Maya served drinks while her gift mapped the emotional landscape of the room. Mrs. Patterson bragged about her placement skill with electronics repair. The Johnsons showcased their help's talent for urban gardening. Each family spoke about their domestic workers as valuable resources, carefully managed and properly grateful. But underneath the civilized veneer, Maya sensed a collective anxiety that ran deeper than economic uncertainty. Of course, sometimes placements don't work out, Dr. Webb said, his eyes finding David Henderson across the room. The Santa situation was regrettable but necessary. We can't allow sentiment to compromise community safety. The emotional response to Webb's words hit Maya like a physical blow. Fear spiked through the room, accompanied by the sick satisfaction of people who had convinced themselves that terrible actions were justified. But David Henderson's response was different, shame and self-loathing so intense that Maya had to grip the serving tray to keep from stumbling. Later that night, Maya found Zoe sitting on the basement stairs, tears streaming down her face. "I heard them planning it," Zoe whispered. Maria found out about the supply cache's dad was hiding from the neighborhood food distribution. She was going to report it to the community council, so she couldn't finish, but Maya's gift filled in the blanks. Maria Santos hadn't simply been dismissed or relocated. She had been murdered, and her body disposed of with the same clinical efficiency that the neighborhood applied to garbage collection. Maya felt the weight of the truth settling on her shoulders like a lead blanket. She now understood why her mother's cooking skills and her own empathic abilities had been so readily accepted. They were replacing someone who had been eliminated for asking inconvenient questions. The revelation about Maria Santos transformed Maya's understanding of their situation from desperate but manageable to actively lethal. She began to see the Henderson household not as a haven, but as a carefully maintained crime scene where she and Alana were unwitting accomplices in covering up murder. Alana noticed the change immediately. "You're different," she said one morning, as they prepared breakfast. "More careful. What did you learn?" Maya hesitated, knowing that the truth would shatter her mother's fragile hope. But Elena's gift for reading people extended beyond Maya's supernatural abilities. She could see the fear in her daughter's eyes. "Tell me," Elena commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had survived 3 months on the streets. Maya explained everything: Tommy's nightmares, Zoe's guilt, the emotional residue of murder that clung to their basement room like a stain. Elena listened without interruption, her face growing harder with each revelation. "So we're not just servants," Elena said finally. "We're witnesses. And when witnesses become inconvenient... The parallel to their situation was clear. Unlike the stark choices faced by characters in space-bound adventures, where survival often meant choosing between competing life support systems, Maya and Elena faced a more complex moral landscape. They could remain silent and complicit, potentially ensuring their own survival while enabling future murders. Or they could act on their knowledge and almost certainly sign their own death warrants. The decision was taken from them when Dr. Webb arrived for an unexpected visit. Maya was serving lunch when she felt his emotional signature, cold calculation mixed with growing suspicion. He had come to assess whether the newest placement posed the same threat as Maria Santos. "Elena's integration has been remarkably smooth," he told David, though his words carried an underlying threat. "No questions about neighborhood operations, no curiosity about resource distribution. Exactly what we hoped for after the Santos complications." Maya felt her mother's carefully controlled terror spike. Elena understood the subtext perfectly: compliance was the only thing keeping them alive, and that compliance was being actively monitored. But Dr. Webb's visit had another purpose. He had brought along Robert Chun, A man who claimed to be Elena's brother, but whose emotional signature screamed deception. Maya realized with horror that this stranger was meant to recognize Elena and provide justification for her eventual disappearance. "Elena?" Robert said, his performance carefully rehearsed. "I've been looking for you everywhere. You need to come with me. Your daughter, too." The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Elena would be forced to choose between going with this stranger, certainly to her death, or refusing, and thus demonstrating the same independence that had doomed Maria Santos. Either choice would provide Dr. Webb with the excuse he needed to eliminate another inconvenient witness. Maya felt her gift working overtime, mapping the emotional landscape of the room. David Henderson's shame was overwhelming, but so was his fear of Dr. Webb. Sarah Henderson had shut down emotionally entirely, protecting herself through willful ignorance. Only Zoe radiated genuine horror at what was unfolding. "I don't know." "You," Elena said carefully, her voice steady despite the terror Maya could feel radiating from her. "I think you have me confused with someone else." Dr. Webb's satisfaction was palpable. Elena's denial gave him exactly what he needed: evidence of deception that could be used to justify whatever came next out as the adults continued their deadly dance of words. Maya made a decision that would either save them all or doom them. She stepped forward, her young voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Actually, Dr. Webb," she said, her gift guiding her words with supernatural precision, "I think there's something you should know about the neighborhood's resource distribution. Something Maria Santos discovered before she died." Asterisk. The silence that followed Maya's words was deafening. Dr. Webb's emotional signature shifted from cold satisfaction to genuine alarm, while David Henderson's shame transformed into something approaching panic. Even the fake Robert Chun seemed startled by the 12-year-old's direct challenge to their carefully orchestrated plan. "What did you say?" Dr. Webb asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Maya felt her mother's terror spike, but she also sensed something else: Elena's fierce pride in her daughter's courage. Maya had spent weeks learning to read the emotional currents in this house, and she knew exactly how to weaponize what she had discovered. "Maria Santos found out about the supply caches," Maya said, her voice carrying the certainty of someone who had felt the truth in the emotional residue of the crime. "She discovered that certain families were hoarding resources while others starved. She was going to expose the whole system." The room exploded into chaos. Dr. Webb lunged toward Maya, but Elena intercepted him with the swift violence of someone who had learned to fight for survival on the streets. David Henderson shouted for his wife to call security, but Zoe had already grabbed the household communication device. "I'm not calling Dr. Webb's people," Zoe announced, her teenage voice crackling with righteous anger. "I'm calling the real community council, the one that still believes in fairness." Maya's gift showed her the complex web of emotions now filling the room. The fake Robert Chun was experiencing genuine terror, not of physical harm, but of exposure. His job had been to provide cover for Elena's elimination, but he was clearly unprepared for actual conflict. Sarah Henderson emerged from her emotional shutdown with the fury of someone who had been willfully blind to horrors happening under her roof. "You killed that woman in our house," she screamed at her husband. "You brought murderers into our home, around our children." The confrontation that followed was nothing like the clean violence of space adventures, where heroes and villains were clearly defined and justice was absolute. This was messy, human, and complicated. David Henderson had participated in murder not from evil, but from cowardice. Dr. Webb had orchestrated it not from malice, but from a twisted sense of community protection. But Maya's gift also revealed something else. The emotional signatures of people throughout the neighborhood were shifting. Zoe's call to the real community council had triggered a cascade of revelations. Other families were discovering their own moral reckonings, as the truth about the supply hoarding and the murders spread. Elena fought with the desperate efficiency of someone protecting her child, but Maya realized that physical violence wouldn't solve their fundamental problem. The system that had created this situation, the economic collapse, the resource scarcity, the moral compromises remained intact. "Stop!" Maya shouted, her voice carrying an authority that surprised everyone. "Fighting each other won't fix this. The real problem isn't Dr. Webb or the Hendersons. It's the system that made us all desperate enough to treat each other as property." The wisdom of her words cut through the chaos like a blade. Even Dr. Webb paused, his emotional signature shifting from aggressive defensiveness to something approaching recognition. "You're right," Zoe said, her voice thick with tears. "We became monsters because we were afraid of becoming victims. But there has to be another way." The resolution came not through victory or defeat, but through the slow, painful process of rebuilding trust. The Community Council investigation revealed the full extent of the resource hoarding and the murders that had protected it. Dr. Webb and his co-conspirators faced justice, not the clean justice of adventure stories, but the messy, imperfect justice of a community trying to rebuild itself. Maya and Elena didn't simply escape to safety. They became part of the solution, using Elena's skills and Maya's gift to help create a new system based on mutual support rather than exploitation. The Henderson family faced their own reckoning, working to repair the damage they had allowed to happen under their roof. Asterisk.